morning, everybody, and welcome to CEO Chat. It is Friday. It is 10:30. This is Joe Asamendi.
And that is the one and only
Always
Alcini.
the one and only Alcini. Well, I'll take that.
Okay.
We have, as a guest today, you and I always talk about the importance of aligning people with the purpose of the company,
Right.
and inspiring each of them to be their best self. We have with us today a young gentleman by the name of Scott Beltz, who has started as a managing partner of a company called NurtureCulture. And he's here to talk about how his company helps companies make that happen. Scott, welcome to CEO Chat. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you so much, Al. Thank you so much, Joe. It is an honor to be here as a representative of this newly formed organization. We are a startup, however, we are hungry to assess the culture of not only this region of the country, but the domestic regions of the United States and the culture of our world.
It's which really does kind of introduce the whole concept of culture and what you do to help companies shape it. So from your point of view as a managing partner of NurtureCulture, what is it that makes you different, and how do you solve the culture problem?
That's a wonderful question. I would have to start first with education and the fact that this is a new emerging industry that's been around for decades in a variety of different terminologies and formats: change management, engagement, productivity. We're looking to encompass all of these aspects of re-engineering culture into one complete, succinct package, a culture observation. And to accomplish this, we had to solidify human capital reporting metrics, which are going to be expected by the top dogs moving forward, the large financial organizations. And this is going to be a decade-long endeavor to get the education out there that culture not only increases profit potential, it increases budget certainty, and it also allows for higher work satisfaction and a greater understanding of the values that are needed to support a community as a whole. Culture does not stop at an organization's front doors. It expands into the world around it. And
into the community it serves, or depending on how large the company is, the scope of the company, its culture is really an integral part of the way it works. See, it's so refreshing to hear somebody actually say those things out loud. And what's exciting about this is that you're actually having communications now with people in C-suite roles who know that they need to pay attention to this, but just don't know how to do it. So how do those conversations typically start? Who do you have those conversations with?
Ideally, the HR department traditionally has been the focal point of assessing human needs. We're human beings, we're creatures that crave attention to our desires and our needs, but ideally, there's a new emerging role: people and culture officers, VPs of people and culture. These individuals are who we're looking to assess their strategic viewpoint of where their culture is heading. And we want to walk in those doors and get that atmospheric observation in place to assess how their energy is interacting with what they're endeavoring to achieve, the difference they're attempting to make. So the process starts. As you know, the sales cycle is going to be longer with bigger organizations. Unfortunately, we had an organization pre-pandemic, we were going to walk in a 4,000 team member company. We had a tour set up, and the first initial goal was to take this tour and assess the feeling, the energy of what these team members were experiencing on the manufacturing line. And this would snowball into a meeting, an immediate assessment with the VP of People and Culture and the respective operations managers to ensure that they understand that we're walking in with an eagle's eye. We're not looking to walk in there and provide paperwork that can just be thrown out the window. This is a solid foundation for an organization to stand upon for the entirety of their respective operations, with refinement.
How's that pandemic affected culture? Because it's obviously a whole different thing.
That's a wonderful question, and I appreciate you asking that, because humans need to be in front of one another like we are right now. And as you know, Zoom, the Skype, the Google Meets, all of these amazing technological advancements have allowed us to communicate, but the espoused nature of this new environment has allowed for a lack of engagement. We've been assessing the fact that engagement actually increased, as Al had alluded to in a prior conversation, when the pandemic restrictions were put in place, but there was an immediate snapback, a rubber band effect, where the engagement just took a deep dive down, under 30%, which is not where we want to be. We want that to be about 2/3 of the organization. And ideally, we have to assess how can we, in an espoused culture, in an espoused environment, how can we ensure that people are still interacting, collaborating, and empowering one another to accomplish their job responsibilities?
You know, it's funny, while you're having that conversation, I'm realizing myself that COVID is just a blip. It will come and go. But the effects of COVID will last for a long time. I mean, the way we communicate with each other, the platforms we use, less face-to-face, less business travel, more distance-type encounters, means that we're going to feel less connected to each other, which makes culture even more important, which gets me to my point. The CEO who tells you that they don't want to spend money because of COVID on something like culture is actually kind of undercutting their entire future by being so short-sighted, aren't they?
Absolutely. The goal here, Al, is to ensure, again, that not only are we servicing, but we're educating. The triple bottom line mentality of the 20th century got us so far, but to be able to enter a new era of conscious capitalism, we have to ensure that the turnover that is siphoning out the lifeblood of business in terms of finances is assessed properly through these human capital reporting metrics to lead to a path of understanding that when you retain team members who want to be there, it allows for a greater understanding of the cultural structure, the structural fit, the organizational understanding of what each team member has to do to not only provide value, but to be compensated as well for all the hard work they're putting in. So ideally, we want to ensure that for a decade, we're able to assess what exactly their turnover reduction can be. In a small organization, it's going to be slightly less when you have 10 to 50 team members.
Right.
A large organization, you're going to have a lot more profit potential in place to roll out more marketing campaigns to interact with other organizations. We're talking about collaboration through co-elevation, and this is only going to increase an industry's capabilities of innovation and honestly competitive advantage. We're looking to not only allow for a team environment for companies to flourish, but young professionals, Generation Z, is craving engagement from their managers. And this is an opportunity for us to compound.
To really make that
You're a
happen.
young guy. How did you get involved in this? This is heady stuff when you think about it. How did you get involved with the culture idea?
I appreciate you asking that question. I believe that we are all a culmination of our life experiences, toxic, negative, positive. I've been blessed to have a familial unit in my mother, Sharon Beltz, and my father, Skip Beltz, who have been able to express authentically what they've been through in working environments. My mother worked remotely as well as in a variety of different environments through data collection in the store industry, such as Walmart, Giant, Wegmans, and she was able to assess in an espoused environment where toxicity came about. And the other side of the coin, my father, a hero, the hero of Pottstown, saved the principal from nearly being beaten to death. This man started on the bench, on the table, and decided to put in 28 years at C.F. Martin Guitar, one of the oldest organizations in our domestic regions of the United States, and honestly the world, that's still in place to this day. He chose to dedicate his career to not only building up his profession, but building up the culture, the familial values of an organization. And I'm so grateful for my parents, for the community that I grew up in, to give me, again, positive, negative, toxic, everything in between, all these experiences that have allowed me to assess what is an optimal path towards a cultural cohesion, a cultural successful environment that allows for all of us to ensure, again, that we're all being respected.
Well, Jane and Skip have got to be really proud of you.
Sharon and Skip.
Sharon and Skip, I'm sorry. Sharon
No
and Skip
worries.
have got to be really proud of you. I mean, that's, but let's talk about this in practical terms. We have a CEO out there who believes they have a culture problem, and many do. But they also have a board of directors that are watching how much money they spend and what they're spending it on. Now, it's never easy for a CEO to go to a board of directors and say, I want to spend money on something that doesn't have a direct result. You follow me? Anything that's kind of like an indirect investment, which is an investment in, let's say, nurturing a culture. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
So how do we give them the tools they need to move forward with you? And where do you start how do you make that real for them? How do you make that happen?
the first question we have to ask ourselves and these CEOs is, are you in the short game or the long game? That infinite mindset. I'm sure you're familiar with Simon Sinek and everything he's been able to perpetuate as an industry savant. And this education is allowing the leaders of organizations to understand that what they're putting in now is a drop in the bucket for ultimately the growth of their organizational entity in any industry. Nonprofit, for-profit, sports teams, educational institutions, and political communities from the ground up. My grandmother, my mom, Carol Culp, she was involved with the borough, and she was fascinated by the dynamics of this small government entity that was able to also have a culture that we just think, all these political figureheads, they're talking, faces on a screen, when in reality, they're also assessing culture. So business and team environments are all cohesive, and it's a question that we want to be asked. However, it's going to take time, like you alluded to, Al.
It's going to take time, and you've got to be in it for the long haul, which I think is really critical. So you come into a company, they explain to you what they believe they need done, which is sometimes actually what they need done and sometimes not. You work with them to really try to crystallize that. And what steps do you take? You use science in what you do. It's not kind of a ritualistic kind of a thing.
No voodoo magic here.
No, and talk about the real science that you use to actually create a culture. Help a company develop a culture that works for them.
It starts with the creation. I worked with a PhD candidate in industrial and organizational psychology who had 17 years of corporate experience at PP&L. So this wonderful human being, Corinne Ronimus, she was a master's graduate from Lehigh University, well-educated, understood the academic and professional side of developing out a tool that can authentically assess human capital reporting metrics. And this is diversity for our wonderful viewers who don't understand the jargon we're kicking around. Human capital reporting metrics encompass work satisfaction, diversity, promotion rates, training. We took it, again, a step further than the anticipated SEC compliance human capital reporting metrics and solidifying 10 for our observation. But it starts with that initial conversation with the leadership team to find out if they have their manifesto in place. The mission statement needs to be expanded upon. The mission is the core strategies of how you accomplish your vision and your purpose. The purpose is what you're setting out and endeavoring upon to achieve. The vision is that summit. You're standing up there, you've achieved victory, you've made that difference. And once we know what their vision is of their ideal cultural success, it's game on. We walk in there, we feel that cultural environment, the mechanistic work structure of a manufacturing facility, the espoused environment of a service-based industry. All of these cohesive, interlinked, community-based, familial-based organizations have at their heart a core, a human core that we're looking to not only extract, but to assess internally and externally through this culture observation. Tiered interviews are utilized to not only get in a conversation with the leadership team, but the middle managers, the supervisors, the frontline employees who are grinding every day to sustain the operations. We want to hear straight from them what they believe the current state of the culture is. And this, again, is funneled into our weighted culture metrics that give an overall culture score. I've already had owners of organizations ask me, what do you think the culture score is? And they just laugh, they chuckle. What is it, a 20? That's an F, and they have high profit potential already. What would they be able to achieve if over 80% of team members leave their jobs due to toxic culture, due to bad management? What would they be able to achieve if they could flip the narrative to ensure that their team members stay and not only want to work, but grow the organization? That's where we're trying to get these CEOs to envision what the bottom line could be.
What is the potential of all this human capital if you invested in it, and what kind of a yield could you get from that?
Yes.
And you dropped a little hint of something that for people out there who are watching the program and might be CEOs of publicly traded companies, the anticipated mandates from the SEC. Talk a little bit about, there are a couple of reasons why people ought to call you, one of which is there's something coming down the road that they need to be getting ready for. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the SEC compliance, Lori A. Richards was a wonderful wonderful team member within the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, and she chose to start the culture of compliance. It's taken 17, 18 years to finally get to the feeling side of business. As you know, there's been a lot of unfortunate occurrences in the financial industry the past couple decades. But that was the growing pains of learning how to hold organizations accountable with their operations to ensure that we could assess this team environment properly. Because when you have toxicity with embezzling funds and team members not enacting upon their job responsibilities, how can you assess the culture? Now that we're able to ensure regulations are in place to have the correct operations with these top dogs, the financial institutions, the publicly traded companies that need these human capital reporting metrics, not just want, but need and will be required to give these out on an annual basis moving forward. The goal is to provide that avenue for them to understand that this is going to ensure the longevity of everything that they've built up individually within their respective lives. You two are individuals who have worked so hard to get to where you are in your careers, and these CEOs have worked so hard to get to where they are now. Why throw that all away just for their team members to, walk into a team environment, to walk into a familial environment, a community, and perpetuate the toxicity that they're receiving from these organizations? Because as you know, a work environment can be stressful, but these human capital reporting metrics give a voice to every single person, from the janitor who's creating a clean. We know how important cleanliness is nowadays. A clean environment, they're able to give their perception of the reality of the organization.
We need to take a break. This is a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to continuing it on the other side of the break. For CEOs out there that are watching, if you think of your business as a farm, imagine how much more productive your farm would be if 80% of the seeds took root and bloomed rather than just 10 or 15%. You look at it that way, and then you've got an argument back to your board of directors to say, I think this is a smart investment. We'll explore that more when we come back after this break with more CEO Chat and Scott Beltz.
Stick around.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacqueline. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacqueline.com to book an appointment today.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
back.
We're back to this is RVN TV. I said morning coffee. CEO chat,
Yes.
which is a very important experience for Joe Assamendi and me.
There you go.
It's always a pleasure working with
Yeah,
you, Joe.
it's always, and we've been doing this for a while.
What do you think about this guest?
I think this guest is fantastic.
Isn't he great?
I mean, a young guy like you gives me hope for the future.
It's
Seriously.
encouraging because
Right.
we're looking at the truth is the truth no matter how old you are. So when you've tapped into the truth and you really believe that you're telling the truth and you believe in what you're saying, whether you're 25 or at Joe's age, 45, whatever. I mean, it just sort of comes through, and I think that's so important. And it ought to be one of the reasons why people call you. There are a number of people out there that kind of have in the back of their heads that maybe they've got a culture problem in their companies, maybe their sales are flat, maybe things aren't working the way they want. They'd like to see people more engaged, they ought to call you. But we didn't really get a chance to talk about not-for-profits and schools potentially. Why don't you talk a little bit about why culture is important, whether you're making money or not?
Again, wonderful questions, one wonderful question after another, and I want to elaborate upon the truth prior to assessing our non-barrier marketing tactics that are able to integrate into for-profit, nonprofit, educational institutions of varying sizes, elementary school through college and graduate schools, all the way up. We're looking to ensure that these cultural environments are given an opportunity to be cultivated, to be nurtured. And the reason for nonprofits as well as for-profits to be able to have an opportunity to assess their culture is because they also have team environments in them. Wherever humans are, wherever human beings are, we have to take out the sordid of truth. My personal manifesto, honed through the will of the people, striving to nurture our world, to give them this figurative, to give them this materializing force of human will to show them that their profit potential, their abilities, their operational capacity can be increased in whatever their operations and job responsibilities are, regardless of who their industry is involved with, because non-barrier marketing, non-barrier collaboration allows for the most amount of innovation. And I don't want to digress too far off of our general topic about for-profit, non-profit, educational institutions, government bodies, community level, boroughs, all the way up through the state and federal governments, even religious institutions out. It comes back to these human beings bringing toxicity out of these work environments, out of these amazing, again, industries and operational facilities that really provide so much support for the community, and they're bringing it back into their home. We consider one team member, even at a nonprofit, even at a for-profit
Doesn't make any difference.
institution, it doesn't make a difference.
You mentioned non-barrier too, and I think I know from my own experience that the two things that go wrong in any company are passive-aggressive behavior, where people become so turf-oriented that they defend the real estate that they occupy, and that becomes more important to them than helping other people get things done. And also silo thinking. People get so lost inside their own departments that they forget the purpose that their department serves. Breaking down those barriers is a big part of your value proposition, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm so grateful that you mentioned silos, because we at NurtureCulture, we believe in co-elevation and ensuring that collaboration and empowerment and the discipline that comes with internal motivation can be put into the external. Conscious Capitalism, a beautiful book by John Mackey, he co-authored it, the co-CEO of Whole Foods, gave this new model of Win-6 dynamics, the community, the shareholders, every stakeholder who's involved, the team members, and each customer that's interacting with this organization. Again, whoever's benefiting from a nonprofit or for-profit is getting some type of empowerment to have a better standard of living. This is all about our livelihood. We're going through an uncertain time right now. And again, it comes back to where we envision ourselves once we come out of this dark pit of despair. We have to anchor our light and ensure, again, through non-barrier marketing, non-barrier collaboration, these silos that have been instilled for generations are broken down not through hate and destruction, but through re-engineering and cultivation and a nurturing, loving, sustainable process of authenticity without expectation for reciprocation.
How does an engagement with your company work? Kind of walk me through the process.
the engagement with our organization comes back to internal team environment or external with our customers. I want to clarify on that.
Okay.
The internal engagement, our team members operate with a decentralized, collaborative, empowering, and innovative atmosphere. We just had a wonderful team meeting yesterday with a new client relationship specialist and our freelance content creator, Julie Downs and Brandon Kelly. These two individuals had never collaborated before, ever. But by giving Brandon a voice, he was able to actually construct a article title that was at first, it was good, but
Right.
good is the enemy of great. And through this collaboration, allowing a team member to be engaged where
Right.
otherwise he would have never been engaged,
Well-
this allowed for a more solidified approach to our education from a content standpoint. So internal engagement, we're looking to have the greatest team of all time.
Sure.
The GOAT team, a team environment that is striving to not only be the best that ever was, but to set the gold standard for cultural success. Externally, we addressed that in the first segment. I encourage everybody to double back for those wonderful questions. But our internal culture, that is the impetus of what we're doing. If we can't have the best culture, if we can't have that gold standard, how can we ask somebody else
And
to
you
have that?
can't. You love what you do. You love. I mean, that was a question. You love what you do. You love what you do. It's obvious you do, and all the energy of you doing the work comes from the love that you have for it. You love this. Why? What is it at the end of the day that makes you proud? What changed at a company that you serve that makes you proudest at the end of the day?
What makes me proudest not only has to do with striving for a world where humanity doesn't neglect the feelings that we have internally through allowing multiple boxes of understanding to be opened and to allow for a gap of understanding, a bridge to be built for ultimately authentic collaboration. What makes me proud is people motivating themselves, not through the carrot and the stick, not through me walking in and giving a rousing speech, but them internally, themselves, allowing themselves to create their ideal vision for who they are as human beings, for who they want to be in a company. And this ultimately makes me the proudest because we're giving a vehicle, we're giving the keys to a vehicle for people to drive into the sunset of their ideal desires.
And you know what? But you mentioned voice too. The cool thing about that is you want to bring out the voice of people authentically from them. You don't want to tell them what to say when they open their mouths and express their voice. You want to hear what they have to say, even if it ends up being something you didn't expect, because you've got to act on everybody's voice. And whether you just started with the company last week or you've worked for the company for 135 years.
Well, 125.
125.
Give or take a decade.
Your voice is equally important. All voices are equally important. You want to hear all that. It's great. I think that you empower that in your process. I think that's wonderful. Now, we're coming up on the part of the program where you get to tell everybody how to reach you. But go ahead, Joe. Ask.
We got to mention your tie
Yeah,
guy. 'Cause I'm a tie guy.
He's a
Everybody
tie
knows
guy.
that. I'm a tie guy. I have a lot of ties.
Definitely.
But that knot is so special. Why don't you tell our audience exactly what's special about that knot?
This knot represents the unity of every cultural environment that is in our world, the unity of an unbreakable knot. The Trinity knot, the infinity knot, is a symbol, a powerful symbol of infinite wisdom, of infinite collaboration and empowerment that we can all anchor within our own being. And I want to represent that into any environment. Walk in there and show them that I'm working for them, that I have complete and utter solidarity, that I will not allow toxicity, I will not allow negativity through the sword of truth, the will of the people striving to nurture our world, that will allow for me and NurtureCulture and our team members to provide ultimately that nurturing, that authentic, that collaborative, empowering atmosphere for other people to thrive. This knot has been commented on by a lot of Thai guys, so we definitely appreciate it being pointed out.
I think what you're communicating to me anyway is that you when you go to work in an organization,
Yes.
it's not on the organization, it's in it.
Yes.
So when you get engaged, when somebody engages you, what they're really doing is expanding their company to include you for a period of time while you work together on this culture problem. That unity idea, I think, is a very powerful idea, and I think you have to be given a lot of credit for expressing it.
Thank you so much. And
So-
while we're on the topic of unity, I wanted to reference our new web application that is currently in alpha development, cultureunity.com, that is going to give an opportunity for not only team members but organizations to create profiles to establish real-time culture metrics. All this data we're collecting, what are we going to do with it? We're going to put it out there in the open to hold these organizations accountable, to hold team members to holding these organizations
Help them
accountable.
hold themselves accountable too, and that's
We're looking to embellish upon the Facebooks, the LinkedIns, the Twitters that have already got a foothold in how to allow for this communication. We're looking to innovate to create this web application, to create this app that is going to provide unity. And
great.
that's-
Okay, now we're at that part of the program. You get to tell everybody how to call you.
Wonderful.
Take a look in your camera. Let everybody know how to get a hold of you at NurtureCulture, Scott.
Hey everyone, it's Scott Beltz. I'm super excited to be expressing this on CEO Chat. And if you want to reach me, have no fear. 484-226-0086 is my number. Give me a ring at any point in time or reach out via email to Scott Beltz, B-E-L-T-Z, at WeNurtureCulture.com. And if you just want some general information, go to info@WeNurtureCulture.com or www.WeNurtureCulture.com, and we will lend a hand to guide you toward your ideal vision of your respective cultural success through authenticity without expectation for reciprocation. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
I think that was great. And you need to send us the YouTube link to show us how to tie that that way, because we need to know how to do that.
That's a bonus when they hire you.
Absolutely. It's such a
look-
pleasure. You make sure you tell Sharon and Skip we said aye.
Yeah, please do.
And it's such a pleasure having you on the program. And thanks all of you for joining us for a really terrific, very spirited
Absolutely.
CEO chat with Scott Beltz of NurtureCulture.
Yes.
And we'll see you again next Friday for another CEO chat.
Yes, be kind to each other, take care of yourselves, be safe, and we'll be here next Friday.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Take it easy.
Great.